Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the full details for pretty much all of the Cyberpunk units ready to go. We had Rebecca's kit, we had Lucy's kit, we had Lucy's weapon, and now we're back to Rebecca's weapon over here. And the discussion today is going to be based off of whether or not you should actually pull this thing, based off the state of your account, based off of whether or not you're going to be pulling Lucy, and of course, based off of whether or not you want to make a big expenditure when Rebecca's already free and she functions very well with another free weapon option, Static Mist. Because death is a reality that cannot be undone, there's no reason to hesitate. She pulls the trigger, shattering this haunting reverie. Okay, all right. Yeah, no, that's Knowers? No, that's a little bit cryptic, isn't it? Skull Thrasher, base stats, 500 attack and 72% critical damage. This has a very, very, very unique stat blend that we haven't actually seen in quite a while on pistols. I think the last time that we had a stat blend like this was on a Carlotta from way back then. So basically what this does is that this allows the character that uses this to have some of the highest critical damage values like in the game. Like typically they'll be at 300% pretty easily in the stat menu without going like too crazy with it. And the kind of like payoff, the trade-off for doing something like this is that the base attack is significantly lower than other weapon options. Most other weapon options are going to have like a base attack of around like 587, and do keep in mind this when it comes to base attack. Essentially, all of your percentage attack buffs in the game are going to scale off of your base attack. For example, like look at the shit that like Lene has. She can like buff it by up to like 30%. So those big numbers and even like the substats that you see in the menu over here, or even like the main stats from like your Echo, all based off this base number that you're seeing. And so the lower it is, the less impactful those percentage stats are going to be. Something to keep in mind, not too significant because you're making up for that attack loss with those increased critical damage stats over here. But again, if you're thinking about some of the others, like some of the personal buffs that Rebecca has, it could be a little bit significant because she does have, if you look at some of the lines in her kit over here, specifically her inherent skills, she has personal 20% attack buffs on her first inherent, and then she grants the entire team, including herself, 20% attack as well. So she can buff herself with up to 40% attack just from doing her baseline rotation. And with her signature, she might be at like 300 something percent critical damage while she's doing it. Could be really good for her personal damage. But to get the full picture of her personal damage on this weapon, we're going to have to see its weapon effect. First part of the ability grants you 12% attack at synchronization run. The second one is that after you use your intro skill, you're going to gain a 24% basic attack damage bonus for 14 seconds. So Rebecca is a basic attack damage dealer, and just looking at the initial parts of this weapon, I'm going to be honest, this isn't very impressive. This is one of the more kind of like mediocre looking effects just in the first half, so maybe the second half is going to save it. Inflicting hack shifting increases the wielder's basic attack damage bonus by 12% for 14 seconds. So you're seeing over here, 36% basic attack damage, 12% attack, but then the attack of resonators in the team is increased by 24% for 30 seconds. So in reality, Rebecca has very clear and easy uptime on hack shifting. She's got plenty of abilities in her kit that will actually inflict this debuff. Let me just make sure that I know exactly which ones are going to be doing that. She inflicts it on her intro skills, her enhanced heavy attacks, and her liberation. So plenty of opportunities, and she uses her intro skill at the start of her rotation, and then she uses her liberation at the end of her rotation. So it's pretty much always going to be there, and that buff is going to be pretty much active for every single person on your team the entire duration of all the team's rotations. That's a pretty substantial buff. And overall, the total stats are going to be 36% attack to Rebecca, and then 36% basic attack damage, and then 24% attack to the rest of the team. At its baseline, this is a very good signature. This is a very strong signature. And if you're looking to get very high performance out of your Rebecca, I suggest you pull this thing. And my personal take is like this. It's really, really, really good but it's mainly focused on Rebecca's personal damage. And so unless you plan on getting multiple sequence nodes of Rebecca and plan on using her kind of like as more of a personal damage dealer, I don't really recommend that you decide to invest the pulls into getting this thing. And the reason is very, very, very simple. Because you can just use a weapon called Static Mist instead, ladies and gentlemen. And I talked about it before. And what Static Mist does is it has some trade-offs. You have ER instead of attack. You also have a higher base attack and a crit rate stat instead of critical damage at 72%. And the third thing is, you don't have any real personal damage buffs, like the basic attack damage buff or the self-personal attack buff. The only buff you have over here is to the next teammate. A 10 to 15% attack boost, depending on, or I think it's like 12 to 20%, depending on how many dupes you have of this weapon. And when this is the free standard option that some people have many copies of at this point, but you can easily grab one, basically, this is going to provide a partial amount of that team buffing ability. And when the edge runners lineup is pretty much typically going to be Rebecca, Lucy, and then a support like a Shorekeeper or a Mornier, this attack buff is realistically only affecting Lucy and Rebecca in the edge runners team. And so this buffing the attack of all resonators, it's really mainly just, it's buffing Lucy and Rebecca. And if you're really only looking to buff Lucy, which is like a low investment Rebecca's main role, because you can see over here, Rebecca's got those big attack buffs that we looked at before from her inherent skills, 20% to the entire team here. And then she's also got 30 points of Tomb Break boost as well for the entire team. And then an outro skill that perfectly matches up with Lucy's heavy attack damage type. You can kind of just use Static Mist on Rebecca and get like most of Rebecca's sort of like support potential. But if you want Rebecca's damage output and her personal damage output to keep up, then you probably want to get her signature. And then you'll also get a big boost, a near double in the amount of attack that she's going to be providing to Lucy. And then also benefit from that attack buff herself. So that's really like the main use case of this weapon over here. It's to ensure that when it comes to like this cyberpunk team that you're using, that it's reaching the full damage levels possible. But that's probably what you would have guessed. But is it necessary? I personally don't think so. And I would heavily suggest if you only have one signature to choose and you really want to build the Edge Runners team, pull Lucy's instead. If you're trying to make the Edge Runners team better and you've only got one weapon to choose and it's Lucy's or Rebecca's, Lucy's is a way better option. And the reason for that is simple. Lucy's weapon is broken. It is so much better than the phasic homogenizer standard option, it's ridiculous. On the other hand, Static Mist, if you were to compare it to Rebecca's signature, the one that you're seeing over here, the Skull Thrasher, right? The difference in team DPS is not even going to be close. And so, under the impression, right, that these maybe aren't going to come back, you might not be able to pull them again. If you only have one option, I'd go for this. But naturally, if you can pull both, go for both. I mean, if you're scared of like the FOMO and you're scared of like them never coming back, but then that's also just like the, hey, that's kind of like what collabs and exclusive events are supposed to do. And if you really, the main realization I think most people should have is that I don't think you're going to need any of these units. I don't think these units are going to be at the top of the meta. I think they're intentionally designed not to break the game. I think they're not like put in to like be the top one slots and like the must pulls. They're a pull them if you want them. And Rebecca's weapon is like one of the biggest pull them if you want them weapons ever created in the history of the game. Now though, you might be wondering, okay, what about some of like the baseline capabilities of this weapon? Because one conversation we always like to have, right, is how usable is this weapon on other characters? And I'm happy to say one thing about this. It's actually not like the worst weapon ever. Like, it's surprisingly enough one of the more general use case pistol weapons in the game. Because if you just have the ability to use an intro skill, which every unit in the fucking game has, you'll get at minimum a 24% basic attack damage buff. Surely there's going to be a basic attack damage pistol user in the future. Like, at least one of them will exist at some point, a basic attack damage pistol user. Comparatively, this is about as effective as like Lupa's signature on like a Calcharo. And it's decent on Calcharo. This is basically as effective as, like, half a Jinsei signature. Because you're going to get 24% basic, right? It's not bad. And the main user of this right now is, oddly enough, Lene, who also is able to use Lucy's weapon. The only other character that can use Lucy's weapon. This is also the only other character that can, like, actually benefit from Rebecca's weapon. But this is the unfortunate reality. Lene is not a main DPS. So she doesn't want the, like, main DPS potential of this weapon, nor does she want Lucy's. And the reality is, in her baseline default role as a sub DPS, you'd prefer that she's on Static Mist over Rebecca or Lucy's signature anyways. And so, despite this weapon having some of those use cases, right? Some of those good use cases in the future, they don't really exist in the game at the present. It's unfortunate, but that's just the truth regarding this. Is there potential in the future? Yes, quite a fair amount of it, because we don't have a basic attack damage 5-star limited DPS yet. Their signature is probably going to be way better than this on them. But this is always going to be that sort of like tertiary option. But who knows? Maybe they'd never release that in the first place. And naturally, the other half of this conversation over here is going to be focused on, well, if you don't want Rebecca's signature, what are your other options going to be? This is kind of your only other one, bro. She's a basic attack damage dealer, right? And I guess the only thing that I could potentially think of is, like, if you want to do like a main DPS Rebecca, this is actually decent, because if you're doing a main DPS Rebecca, theoretically, this actually provides like the same amount of like basic attack damage bonus as her sig. Think about it over here. Using an intro skill or dealing basic attack damage, which Rebecca will do, increases the wielder's basic attack damage by 36% for 4 seconds. Which is like, well, Rebecca needs to inflict hack shifting to make her bonus 36%. So, yeah, if you want to do like a DPS Rebecca, this thing ain't bad. You're just never going to be able to activate the second part of her effect. Rebecca and Lene, much more similar than you might have realized, despite the fact that Rebecca is Electro, because their signatures are like very, very, very similar to each other. You can also decide to use phasic homogenizer as well if you are trying to do like some sort of weird DPS Rebecca, but that will typically involve pulling a couple of her sequence nodes, I would believe, because she's a sub DPS. And if you're at the point where you're pulling sequence nodes, I don't think you're using standard weapons, so you're probably going to be getting her signature or something else anyways. And all this other shit, bro, this is some straight up booty cheeks. Nah, this is straight up ass. Don't even think about using any of these dog shit options below. It's just this one, or this one. That's it. And 95% of people, sorry, 98%, I think I'm going to go higher, should be using this. And on some really fucked up edge cases, you can think about using these, but I don't think very many people are going to do that. Some people might do this one though, but that's mainly it. I would say that Rebecca's weapon, especially after taking a look at Lucy's, especially after taking a look at their kits, it's one of the biggest nice to haves in the game. And I would compare it to having a Denya signature. But like, Denya's signature is way more valuable than this one because standard rectifiers aren't good. This is similar to having like a oh, I know, this is a good one. Like a Chacona signature in the Cardathea team. You want it, it'll be really good, but the team can clear without her on it. It's harder without her on it. Actually, this is very similar to a Lupa signature as well, now that I think about it. Yeah, very similar to other sub DPS buffer signatures. You don't need these at all, but having them is nice, but you can always use the standard option and clear as well. So pull it if you want it, but do keep in mind, hey, brother, this might never come back again. So maybe that leads to you either going all in or just stepping out of the collab completely. And I don't think there's any issue at all with what decision you decide to do. Your mileage may vary. Let me know what you all thought about this one. Peace out.